Task 2 is coming up, and in task 2 you need to do the analysis of the statistics. So we are going to be doing the first 2 points, the number of late arrivals for each bus route and the number of minutes late for each bus route. We aren't doing those two, so we can cross those ones out. So this one is an example of counting the number of late arrivals for each bus route, and the second one is an example of, well, if you're going to do an average, you have to sum. So the bits in red are the bits we've already done. We've assigned the constants. We declared the arrays so that we could store the values of the lateness. We initialized those arrays 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 so that we could actually put things into them. So this is where we declared them and we actually said that they existed. This is where we actually set some of them to contain things. Then we had to loop over the day names, so that was the number, that was us going from 1 to 20, but then obviously iterating the names of the days. And then we had to loop over the bus routes. For example, and for each one of those we had to say, please enter the date and the time. Please enter the time for bus route C, for example, on Wednesday 1. Get the input, check that it was good using a repeat until, then store it in the array. So the new part is going to be, we're going to make a second array. And in order to do this, we're going to make some statistics arrays so that we can store the counts for each bus route. That's that part. And then we're going to obviously make them available. One array for the counting and one array for the summing. Again, looping over the days. And then for each of the arrays, we're going to update the statistics arrays for each of those. And then at the end, you can report the statistics. So off we go. Here we are at the start. There's the constants. There's the arrays for the bus routes. There's the arrays for the days. There's the arrays where we're going to store all the values. Iterate the days, iterate the routes. Make sure that what the person, get the input from the person and make sure that it's good. In other words, it's valid data. Store it in the array using a case of. That's this little section here. Still all inside the loop within the loop. And finally, this little bit I just printed so that we could actually see that it worked. Obviously, when testing this, I didn't test it with 20 and 6. I tested it with 2 and 6 just to show you that it actually works quickly. So I'll just demonstrate that now. Run it with 2, translate. It's an integer. And run translated Python. So you can see enter time for these. So you just have to type numbers in. And you can put some negative times in. Oops. Of course, I didn't press. I typed minus then instead of actually saying minus a number. So I have to run it again. Let's try that again, except typing it normally. 3, 4, 5, minus 3. And so on. Obviously, you can test out the validation rules, for example. So your validation rules there saying it's got to be between those two, greater than or equal to latest. So that's minus 20. So I could put minus 50. And you can see it repeats the question. That's because of the repeat until. So we said it was equal to, that's acceptable. So we can go 3, 4, and last one. You can see it's just printing through them. So that's on day 1. The reason that's happening there is because in the prints I just printed the day, which is just a number. I mean, if you really wanted to when testing that, if you didn't want it to say 1, you could say print, instead of 1, you could say print bus days at position 1. So you could copy that and instead you could do something like that if you wanted that when you're testing it. But anyway, we actually want to print the statistics. So I'm going to do that down the bottom. So let's get going. Declare the statistics arrays. Truth be told, this should all go right up the top, but I'm just going to isolate it down here so that we can see where it's going to go. So first of all, we want the statistics array for the average number of late arrivals for each bus route. Apologies, the number of late arrivals for each bus route. So that's going to be a count. So I'm going to call that count lates. It's going to be an array. It's going to be 6 in length. I'm not going to use the variable 6. We've already got a constant that defines how many routes it's going to be. It's called num routes. So we're going to grab num routes and pop that in there. So that's how big it is. The next thing we're going to do is define, say that it exists, and we're now going to put some, initialize the variables, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So this is going to be where we're adding the counter in. The other array is going to be for working out the average of the lateness. So that's going to be counting all the ones that are late. And the other one is going to do average the number of minutes late for each bus route. And in order to do the average, we have to sum them. So I guess I'm just going to write sum lates. It's not sum actually, sum. I'm going to call it sum all. I don't know what we're going to call it, the average number of minutes late for each bus route. So some route, because it doesn't actually matter. So again, we're going to do exactly the same thing. We need to define it and say that it's got 6 zeros in it. So to store all the sums of the 6 routes. And the other one is going to be to store the counts of counts when a bus is late. So again, we're going to now do our iterations. We can iterate we can have our 2 loops now. Loop over the days, update statistics arrays. So here we go. For a day, arrow 1 to num days. Is it num days? Is it num days? I'm just going to check. It is num days, which is currently 2. I'll put it back to 20, so it is num days. So that's going to count up to 20. And what do we want to do for each of those? Remembering next today. For each of those days, we now want to independently look at each of the routes. I mean, personally, it says loop over days here, update statistics arrays. You could put an if statement in there that just says if you could do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But I would, considering I need to do this for all of the routes, I would rather just do another for loop in there. So for route arrow 1 to num routes. Again, next route. So route's going to go from 1 to 6 again. Same rule as before. So that's going to go 1 to 6. And this one's going to go from 1 to 20. Let's just space that out so we can see that's out of the way. What do we want to do for each of those? We now want to check we need to say if it's a 1, we need to look at the route A array. If it's a 2, look at the route B array, and so on the certain day, and add to the counter if it's late. So we need to say, I don't know, I'm going to call it, again, we need to change from this 1 to 6, and that 1 to 6 needs to be mapped across to one of the arrays, one of the 6 arrays, which is up here, wherever they are, these arrays here. Route A, B, C, D, E, and F, and so on. So, I guess there are many ways we could do that. I might just select an array, make a temporary array, depending on what that's going to be. So let's put a comment. I can delete this later. What array are we looking at? So that's going to be a case of, again, case of route, end case. Same rule as before, 1 colon, 2 colon, 3 colon, 4 colon, 5 colon, 6 colon, because there's 6 different routes that we could be choosing. I'm just going to say current arrow route A. And we could use the same syntax there for defining which route we're doing, B, C, D, E, F. That allows us to know, so now we know current is the current route that we're looking at, depending, because this is counting from 1 to 6, and this obviously maps between route A, route B, route C, route D. So current is always going to be an array, it's just a copy of route A, and it just means that we can interrogate current when we're doing the counting. So now we've got the current array, which is this, and we've got the day on which we're looking at. So the first one is the counts when the bus is late. So it's count late at position day is going to be updated if current at position day is greater than 0. If bus is late, add to its counter. Okay, so that's if. If something, then do we need an else? No, because we're not going to bother with end if. There is no else clause in this, so it's just going to be if something, do something. So if it's late, if current at position day is late, that means less than 0. So if the value stored in the current array at position day is less than 0, then do something. Then do what? Is it many things we're going to do? All right, let's just pretend that it could be many things, but it's only going to be one thing. Then we're going to go to the count lates array at a certain position. At what position are we going to add to? Well, it's at position day. That's the 1 to 6. It's not at position day. It's at position root. Yes, that's better. Because root is what's going from 1 to 6, and count lates is the array that only stores 6 things, and you're going to update it at position root. And that's going to become what it currently was, so it's going to be a copy of itself, which is the 0, plus 1. So that's us counting if it's late. So this is, if it's late, add to its counter. Regardless of whether or not it's late, we have to sum it. So we're going to say sum this item as well. Well, you need to sum it as well because it tells you to do that here, the average number of minutes late for each bus route. So we are looking at current at position day. That's the thing we're going to be summing. And what do we need to do with it? We need to plonk it somewhere. I'll paste that there. So what do we want to do with the current array at position day, which is that number from 1 to 22? Well, we want to add it, the value of it. We want to add that value to the sum root at whichever one we're looking at, because we're trying to sum up 6 different values. So again, we write sum root at position day becomes sum root at position day, what it was, plus the array that we're currently looking at. Well, obviously I've done a mistake again, because you can see I'm saying sum root at position day. What I actually mean is sum root at position root. Sum root is this array here, and at position root, because we're looking at position 1, then position 2. So sum root at position root becomes what it was plus the current array that we're looking at, its day. So that should, if I've done everything right, add up all the values regardless of an if statement to the current array, and that should count up the ones that are late. Obviously we need to print that now. I think it says all the results should be displayed with appropriate annotation. So I guess we just need to iterate those and print them nicely. But it just so happens I've already done that here, so we can pinch that bit there, and we're now going to print some lateness data. You could format this nicer, but just for now I'll do this. Print lateness stats and average data. Okay, so we've pasted that in. For day is 1 to num days, so that's 1 to 20. I'm not going to print. Let's see how we want that to format. So what we want to do is format right at the end. So we're going to print root A or whatever you want to do. So currently this is iterating 1 to 20. What I actually want to do now is iterate 1 to 6, which is num roots. 1 to 6, num roots is 1 to 6. Just check that num roots is 6. It is 6. And what do I want to do for each of those? I want to iterate through these 2 nice arrays that we've made here, one of which will count up all the lates. So this count lates is going to have the 0, the different counters of all the latenesses for each of them, and sum root's going to have the sum. I'll just put a little comment to myself to remind myself of that so I can see the formatting. Just so it's commented out, I can see. So we've got a 1 to 6 counter, and we've already got an array up the top there, this one, bus routes, that tells us, I'll just put that as a comment there as well so I can read it. It's all as one comment line there, so you don't need that second comment. This is just to visualize it so I can see it in my head while we're working. So let's just do one print. Print what? We want to obviously print the bus route. So that's going to be bus routes at position, it's no longer going to be day at position num routes, it's going to be route at position num routes. Bus routes at position route. And what do we want to do? So that's printing A, B, C, D, E, F. That should obviously now say next root. What else do we need to put in the print clause? We then need to print. We then need to say it's the count position and the sum position divided by how many there were. So bus route A. So that's currently just going to say A. We could make that nice and go route. Something like that. A little space there. Route A. Let's put was late. Was late. And then obviously we want the count for that one. So that's count lates at position route. Count lates at position route. So bus route A. Let's put spaces just to make it easier to read. Bus A was late that many times. I'll just stop it like that, otherwise it's going to end up with a really long, if I carry on that sentence. So let's leave that line like that. And then we'll go, and we now need to do its average lateness, which is going to be the sum of the late for that point divided by how many things there possibly were, or how much, divided by how many events there were. So it was late, its average lateness. Its average lateness was like that, and then it's some route at position route. Its average lateness was some route at position route divided by, this won't format very nicely. We'll just try it like this. Divided by 20. Well, it's whatever that is in the constant, which is num days. So it's num days. And in theory, that should work. Let's try it out. We got an error. Syntax error. For day arrow 1 to num days, step 1. Maybe the inline comments aren't behaving. I think that was it. Which is strange because I've got other inline comments. So trash those some of those. Oh no, that's not inline. I think I put other inline comments in there. Yeah, I did there, which is a bit strange. Let's try again. That's an integer. Let's try it. Line 55. Line 55. If question mark is equal to 3. Well, this is coming about because of that case of. So what array are we looking at? It's because of this. He says, if something equals 3. Why am I not getting if root equals 3? Day is 1 to that. Root is that. What array are we looking at? Case of root, which is a variable, a looping variable here that goes from 1 to num roots. Let's get those steps just to see.
I found this on the web.
Thank you, Siri. What array are we looking at? Oh, go away. Case of root. Oh, God. It was that easy. Okay, so yeah, it's working now. Capital OF, and let's not test with 20 and 6 because that would kill me. So I'm going to crash that one, translate it again. It's an integer, and run translated Python. And it's time for mum1. Let's test it. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 3, 4, 5, so on. Here we go. We got an error. List indices must be integers, not tuples. That's on line 49. Count lates. That is caused by these two, which I've done wrong. So that's arrow, because we're doing assignment. I'm assigning those values there on line 59 and 62. Translate again. Run it. The inline comment, not liked. There we go. Root A, of course, they're all late. Root A was late 0 times. Its average lateness was 5. Yeah, that seems to be working. Let's just check that is actually right. I put A as 2 and I put A as 8. Yes, A is 2, A is 8. A is 2 and 8, averages to 5. B, let's get rid of that. B was late 0 times, its average lateness was 3. Average lateness of 3, yep, that makes sense. Test it one more time. Put some negatives in this time. Let's make A really late. Let's make it, what was the maximum? So again, that maximum, it's nice to have that error message in there. So if you haven't done already, it would be nice for you to modify that. So the latest it can go is minus 20. So let's try A. Let's make A really late. All the rest can be something positive. Oh well, except A. Oh, let's make C really late as well. And D can be minus 10. And there you go. Those values should work out. So yeah, you should fix with your repeat until clause if you haven't already done so. Your repeat until clause should have some kind of nice error message there that prompts the user as to what to do. That was from task 1, which clearly mine doesn't. And the only way you can do that with a repeat until, other than just, well, really the best way of doing it is to put an if statement in here that says if that is true, or if that's not true, if it's not that, you can whinge at them. So again, we'll just, might as well put that in while we're here. If time, well, if it's smaller than latest, in other words, if it's less than latest or greater than earliest, then we're going to print a nice little message. So if either of those things is true, then, and then we need the end if there. Then what? Then we need to say naughty. No, we don't need to say naughty. We need to say I've been naughty. If time is less than latest or time is greater than earliest, then do something. So then we're going to print a nice message. So we're just going to say range of values must lie between what are the values? Earliest and latest. The lowest is latest. Between latest between space like so, latest and earliest. Range of values must lie between latest and earliest. Print range of values must lie between latest and earliest, which will be minus 20 and 15, inclusive if you want. So it's just a, you could error, whatever. You can say whatever message you want there, just as long as there's a nice little error message that prompts the person. And then it's going to, if that is true, they get the time, they put it in. If it's less than latest or it's greater than earliest, tell them what they should do. End the if statement, which should have a space there, and re-loop round. And that's it. That's task 2.